Hi everyone. Welcome and welcome back. I'm Another Truth here on YouTube. I need to stress this very clearly. I have to stress the importance of this. Downtown Goro and Bad Seed have pointed this out. They are content creators who have focused on Foodie Beauty content, have provided receipts in terms of Foodie Beauty's own words and admissions. So I want to stress something. Foodie Beauty has done a latest grift, and that had to do with the exploitation of a child with disabilities. I haven't seen the child's face or behavior or anything, but it is stated. I did see some things that were blurred out naturally, so if she is indeed doing this, what I think Foodie Beauty herself said that she was personally raising money and that there would be no um, intervention about the illegality or legality of raising those funds because the interim government is not going to particularly focus on her. And it's said by opinion that's probably why she picked Syria, because it was an easier place to exploit, take people's money, and so on. Now, this latest thing, Syria, unfortunately, from what I have read and researched in disability rights and justice as it is, disability services in Syria are just not there. If the infrastructure isn't there because it's been broken down by conflict, it's the conflict itself that has traumatized people. So people with disabilities and people without disabilities have been traumatized by conflict. Those disabilities aren't being addressed at large because the infrastructure doesn't support it, because it is unstable. Access to health care and humanitarian needs are indeed difficult to reach because of that. So there is some element of legitimacy to show that there's just not enough money. But there are places where you can research and donate if you want. UNICEF might be of help. The Syria education program, I don't know if that's still functioning. That's something that you might want to check out that helps provide education. Now, typically, children with special education needs do not get enough funding for that. Okay. They generally, even in the United States, all right, even in my community, it's rough that children with disabilities don't have what they need to have a full supportive educational experience, and many of them go on traumatized, living with that trauma, who may not survive it in adulthood, who may end up being caught up in conflict itself, among other things. War itself can create disabilities. It is one of the biggest triggers for that. It especially impacts children, and especially children who already have disabilities, and children with Down syndrome tend to have specialized medical needs that may not even be addressed in a place where there's conflict, because if people without disabilities can't access health care, then it comes down to people with disabilities who can't either. They can't maneuver the infrastructure because it's destroyed. There's no path to it. There's no emotional support. There's nothing. I don't know in Syria, but I would assume that this child is probably being loved and taken care of, and the parents are doing the best that they can with what they have. But Foodie has perverted this by promising, so I guess, to raise money for this child. Foodie is not going to fork over any money to support this child for $1,000 a year or whatever it is. I don't know how much education is. I don't know what access to education Syrian children have at this point, because the conflict has interrupted that. So I don't know what children have access to. And because of conflict, children have a difficult time concentrating, thinking, and accessing school safely, and they tend to miss more than not. Any traumatic situation would lead to that. I do not know if there are specialized schools for this child that she exploited for the grift. Okay. My suggestion is don't donate to Foodie Beauty. Look for other ways to support education programs for children with disabilities who have special needs. Make sure that any educational program that you're donating to is equitable and actually gives to children with disabilities, because even in the United States, children with disabilities don't, especially children who are low income, and even children, of middle income, have a hard time. Some don't even get their IEPs, nothing, because the cities don't want to pay for it. They don't think they need it. They don't deserve the extra support. They can't sustain it, whatever. So I don't know where Foodie Beauty comes up with providing this grift for this child to go to school. Where is this child going to go to school safely and consistently unless there is a team of volunteer servants of a particular organization, educators, and protection? That is something that you should research. Now, Foodie Beauty has a habit, in my opinion, of taking money that is used for vulnerable animals and now a vulnerable disabled child, and using that money to pocket it, to line her pockets, to supplement what she doesn't make, to engorge herself with more food as a way of being taken care of. She doesn't care who she exploits or uses in that process, in my opinion. Stop giving her money. If you want to help, reroute your dollars or whatever you use for currency, donate it to a place that is more trustworthy. It is up to you to do the research or to have someone help you in that effort. Don't freely give away your money, your hard-earned money, on this grifter, because it's not going to reach that child. Because it's not just the $1,000 a year. It's the health care the child's going to need, because children with Down syndrome have specialized health care needs that has to be consistent for her to stay in school. The little girl would have to be safe. The little girl would have to have consistent meals to be able to concentrate. It would take a hell of a lot more than $1,000 a month. I do not know what school fees are currently in Syria or what the education department or ministry there is looking like. But do research before you do anything. Never trust a YouTuber like this. Never. She has a documented history of not coming up with receipts for money she's raised, and going into a store for a cat box is not, to me, that is not a receipt. The fact that she feels like she can grift freely because of an interim government, I'm telling you, this human being is the stupidest person on YouTube. The stupidest person, the most irresponsible and selfish person on this side of YouTube. To even consider that. That is her main focus, the fact that she can get away with it because Foodie likes stealing and she likes the thrill of taking from people. She's not excited about helping this child, and for her to present that child, oh, look what I have, just like she does with her cats. Every being that she's ever come across, every relationship she's had with them, it's been strictly transactional. I don't trust Foodie around children, full stop, or animals, or vulnerable people. I don't trust her. I don't really know what's going on around all of this. That live should be reported if it's still up. I believe that's breaking YouTube's terms of service as well. Please stop donating to this grifter. Do your research and donate to a place that is trustworthy, that their overhead isn't more than half of what they're giving away, that at least what they're giving away, most of what is donated goes to them. It's established and equitable for children with disabilities because, like I said, their funding for their education support across multiple communities is horrible. I know that from my own work investigating this as a volunteer anyway. It's just not available. Okay, that support just isn't. That abundance of support isn't available. Maybe that's why Foodie is doing this, but I would not give Foodie $1,000. I would find a place that offers that and have them reach out to the family for that support, that she can get an education, little girl can get an education, she can get the health care she needs, the nourishing meals she'll need, and the program so that she can thrive, not just survive, but thrive. I don't know how realistic that is in Syria, but just don't give this woman any money for that. Don't do that to that child. Don't do that to her family or anybody else, because they're not going to see it. Everything that I state in my videos are based on my opinions and perspectives. Don't take it as fact. Always do your own research. Before I go, I want to talk about a couple of more things related to challenges, especially disabled children facing significant barriers due to poverty, lack of resources, and the ongoing conflict. So, Even though the Syrian constitution guarantees the right to education, it's been severely hampered by displacement, the damage to infrastructure, and inadequate support for special needs. As I mentioned before, there's inadequate support for special needs students and children, even here in the United States, even in my own community. In this case, in respect to Syria, some of the challenges are conflict and displacement. So, this has resulted in widespread displacement, making it difficult for many disabled children to access schools, and sometimes those schools are in conflict zones or areas with limited infrastructure. The lack of resources in itself is an issue. So the schools lack the necessary resources, specially trained teachers, adapted learning materials, and accessible facilities to effectively support disabled children. Okay? As other content creators have expressed clearly, and what I have researched, that over 90% of the population lives below the poverty line. So it makes it difficult to support specialized educational support because they can't even afford the basic needs. Many children with disabilities born with them or because of conflict have specialized health care needs that are not being met. So just putting a child in a school without the trained teachers, without the other supports like alleviating their poverty, getting them safely to one place to another, doesn't seem to exist. So if a child is displaced, let's say if they went to a different region. Now, Foodie, I don't know if she mentioned if the child would go to school in Syria or in another region. I'm not sure, because of language barriers and immigration policies, and usually the lack of respect for refugees. They may get the very basics, but not the full supports. This child receiving this kind of education elsewhere within the region is minimal at best, in my opinion. And another thing to consider, that a child with disabilities already, or children who've been disabled by conflict, whether physically, emotionally, their education, their ability to learn is increasingly stifled by trauma, and there are no trauma supports there in the middle of conflict. And if their school is in a conflict area, then it makes accessibility hard, and especially kids with sensory processing disorders and other neurological disorders. We also know that Foodie Beauty is not only a racist, she's an ableist, a classist. So she is a disgusting human being all around for her approach. And now all of a sudden she cares about people. Children in Syria during the conflict and post-regime change, or the interim government, there's still no stability for children with disabilities. So how does she propose that this child is going to get an education? What type of school is it? What does it provide? Is it supported by UNICEF or one of the major um, humanitarian organizations that are more reputable? Foodie doesn't really go into this. You just can't advertise a child and say, donate to me, without giving specifics, without accounting for, what other things is this child going to need. I think this child, like many other beings in her life, including her current husband, they're just props. They're based transactionally in her life. And her focus is only what she can get out of them for herself, emotionally or financially. I believe that in my own, using my own thought processes, understanding what's going on, that she has no real human connection to anybody, unless she can take from them. And the fact that she is resistant to mental health, yes, it's part of an issue. If you have a personality disorder, you tend to be more resistant to it. Usually it's from a lack of trust. And there are good reasons for that. Others, it's because they think they don't need it. And that's part of the illness itself. I don't know if Foodie has personality disorder, but it's been discussed she might. Um, uh, Theft isn't really one of them. But Foodie just does not have that connection. Foodie might be dealing with mental health disability on her own, and her spending toward her food consumption is out of control, and you don't want to give money to that, even if you don't like her, even if you want her um, to go away on a more permanent basis. Don't do that to her. Don't do that to anybody. I know there are people that still support her because they want to watch her fall. They don't want her to survive any of this. They just want her gone from the planet. Um, and by promoting this self-destructive behavior, they're in effect pushing for that, in my opinion. But nevertheless, don't donate money to her. If you want to donate to help children, go look at those charities, see if they have a supportive chapter in the area. If you're familiar with Foodie Beauty's area, I doubt very much that there's anything else that can be done. And I feel bad for that child and a lot of children like her, where support is already bad, because children with disabilities get left out of a lot of things, especially good education and supportive teachers. But in the middle of a conflict or interim governments and things, the last thing that they focus on is health care and education and adequate food and enrichment of society's most vulnerable people. It's not going to be a concern. So please don't pay this grifter anything.